I guess we'll give you another minute or so to join, and then we'll get started. Okay, welcome to the Velero community meeting for July 9th, 2024. Let's get started with status. Tiger?
Hi, so I'm working on Slack support this week and the Velero server download API design, and that's it.
Okay. And do we have any other status updates before we move on to discussion topics? We'll repeat from, I believe it was mentioned last week, but the current target date for 1.14.1 is, I think that was August 5th. So that's still something we're working towards relatively soon. So if there's anything that needs to make it in there, we should kind of push to get those done relatively soon. We'll move on to the discussion topics. Mikhail?
Right, so it's the design proposed by Lyndon Lee, and Lyndon requested a review. I already gave some my comments on that, and I think like community should also review this. It's important for me because it adds the backup repository special configuration that we require for our OADP deployment. In general, for me, it looks okay. It's using the config map to add this special configuration. Label this config map and use this in the application. So nothing extraordinary here, and it should basically be a clean design for that. But that's just my opinion. Maybe others is different.
Yeah, and I'll have a look at that myself this week as well.
Okay, so that's
it.
it.
Yeah, Mark. This is Lyndon, and I saw your comments, and I will add the other method to create the config map, as you mentioned. And for the other comments, right now I don't see the requirement that need to add anything to the secret. So maybe we can further think about that. And
okay.
Yeah.
I just want the design not to lock to some, so it's open for future maybe possibilities, and it's the same mechanism, right? That maybe the design should include an option to add the secret in the same way if it's required by some of the backend, like storage backend. It doesn't need to be implemented, right? It's just some design consideration to include there.
Yes, actually, for whatever credential things that we should add or have included that in the BSL or backup storage location. So here for the backup repository, we only need to include the configurations that to make any special configuration to the backup repository during the runtime. So here, we may need to make a distinction between the BSL and the backup repository, right?
Okay, yeah, but this will be like a second config map for that?
No, BSL, for BSL, the credential things had already been included in the BSL. That there is a credential field in the BSL spec, and so that credential can be referred to a secret, Kubernetes secret.
Okay,
so
but
that
it won't be
Mm.
won't be used in this mechanism to include configuration for the like copia or right? It won't be.
Yeah, it will be
Okay.
used by Copia because we get the BSL and we get all the configuration from the BSL and from the backup report CR and make them together and to get all the necessary information to initialize the Copia repository. So that means we refer to the when we initialize or connect to the Copia repo, we refer to the BSL and also to the backup repository. So we need to make the definition of what go in the BSL and what go in the backup repository.
Okay, great. So I would be grateful if you could add this comment in the PR comment. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, so I had a couple here. One was just again kind of asking for final review on this. The backup performance improvements. I'm hoping to start implementing that hopefully this week. So if we can get either kind of agree that whatever small questions remain are fine to be handled on the implementation side, or if there's any important things that still need to be hashed out, let's get that done. I know Anshul had his last review had, you had a change requested and we kind of talked about those things. So if those are all worked out to your satisfaction, that'd be great if you can also review, because that'll get rid of the change requested here. But let me know if there's anything that I missed that we still need to get in here as well. But I believe I've either responded to all of your last comments or made updates in response to those.
Sure, Scott. I think I'll go through it again. I think most of them you already resolved, but yeah, I'll just mark them.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, it's just I just noticed since your review had change requested, that needs to be cleared before anyone can merge as well.
I got that. Yeah.
Okay, sounds great. Thank you. Okay, I think that's it for that, unless anyone has any questions live. But I think at this point, let's just take them to the PR. I wanted to bring this up as well. There's some previous discussion, an issue with memory leaks. We had in discussing this issue, kind of realized that at least in the Azure case, we were actually not, the plugin process itself was not being exited at the end of a backup. There was, I had a comment say I wasn't sure this was Azure specific. It might be at an infrastructure level. But I just got confirmation from our scale team inside Red Hat that we are also seeing this same problem with the AWS plugin. So it seems to be relating to the infrastructure and the way we invoke the object store plugins, not the Azure plugin specifically. So I think this is something we really probably should prioritize to see if we can fix this for 1.14.1, because both on our side as well as the user that created this issue are having issues where basically the Velero pod is getting killed because these processes keep piling up. In the user's case here in Azure, they're hitting out of memory issues. And on the Red Hat side, we actually were creating the pod without a memory limit, so we weren't getting out of memory killed, but we eventually get an index out of range error because the number of plugin processes is just, it grows so much. So this is definitely something we need to figure out what's going, kind of the root cause here. Hoping it's a relatively simple fix. It's something that seems like it didn't happen in 1.13. It's happening in 1.14, but something we should hopefully find a fix for soon.
Yes, Scott, and we have also discussed this several days ago, and
okay,
and it's, here's the problem. So here, why, first of all, why the plugin just or the Azure plugin just take some memory, because that inside the Azure plugin there is a buffer, and the buffer is used to read or write data to the to the Azure objects, and whenever a plugin instance is initialized, and a buffer will be allocated. But here we see the problem like for this case, many plugin instances are initialized. You can scroll above and scroll up and see. So here this is something we don't know or don't know the reason at the current time. So it's so it's related to the plugin behavior, and say yeah.
Yeah, when we're seeing it with
Uh,
AWS plugin as well is the point. So it seems that because normally the plugin should exit when we're done with the backup, and it seems like somehow that's not happening now. I don't know why, and it seems like we're seeing it with Azure and with AWS now.
Yeah. Actually, I have one question. Like for one plugin instance, we make one plugin call, and then there will be a plugin process,
Yep.
a plugin process, and immediately I make the first call, and quickly enough I make the second call. What happened to the plugin process? Well, it quit and create a new one, or just serve the second call with the same process. Do you know that behavior?
So what I remember seeing before, and I specifically was looking this in the context of the backup and restore item actions, not so much the object store, but I believe it was similar. The way it seems to have worked in previous versions is that the plugin instance was created when we first made a plugin call. That instance would then be reused for the duration of that reconcile for that backup. But once the backup completed, once that reconcile from the backup controller exited, the plugin instance would exit. So in other words, if you made 500 plugin calls in one backup, we're not making 500 plugin instances, we're reusing that instance. But as soon as the backup is done processing, that plugin should exit. So that if you start a second backup, it should get a new plugin instance created. That's the way it should be working.
Okay, so it means the plugin instance knows how many calls or client calls it needs to serve, right? But
I don't know if it knows how many, or because from what I've seen, one thing I've also noticed that if you turn debug logging on, one of the things you're going to see when the plugin exits is it'll show it. There'll be a debug log saying, plugin received EOF exiting, and so basically, I think the connection gets closed or something like that. Again, I haven't looked into the exact mechanism there, but I believe Velero essentially closes that connection and it stops. The plugin stops.
But since the plugin framework doesn't have some concepts like a session, right? So it can be the thing like create a session and serve all the calls and close the session. So there may be some timeout. For example, when I make a first call and after a long enough time, there is no second call. The process will be closed.
I'm not sure the exact mechanism. It might be time related. I just know that in practice, what I've seen is that we end up reusing the same plugin instance, for the duration of a backup, and then after a backup, it's gone. But even if it's timeout related, the fact that we're seeing these plugin instances kind of piling up and never exiting, if you look at the end here, the timestamps here, for example, it looks like this is one per backup basically, because they're doing a backup every hour. And we're seeing a new plugin instance created. So we're seeing one plugin instance created per backup, which is correct. What we're not seeing is the plugin's not exiting. So something is preventing that plugin from exiting. I don't know if there's a change between 113 and 114 in the way we invoke plugins or the way we. So that's I guess what we need to look at is kind of what the changes there are to figure out what's caused this change in behavior.
Okay, I got it. I agree with you. So we can just check it offline and with priority. I think.
Yeah, and again, I do think this is probably relatively high priority to fix because you end up with an unstable Velero instance where you end up having to kill Velero or wait for it to be killed by its, whether it's out of memory or too many plugins, depending on your environment. This is preventing Velero from being kind of stable with the pod kind of not exiting on people.
Yeah, we'll do. And let's check it offline. And if we find anything, just update the issue.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, thanks.
And Shubham had an issue.
I'm just requesting some final reviews on the 114.1 issue. I brought it up last time, so maybe Lyndon, could you take a look at this?
Yeah. And Xun is just not in the office for these 2 days. So I think
Okay.
he will review it and approve it tomorrow.
Thank you. Thank you.
Do we have any other discussion topics for today?
Scott, on the backup performance one,
Yes.
it's only one comment left from me. I just reverted on that. We can follow up offline on it, and after that we can resolve it.
Okay, sounds great. So if you could just add a new comment relating to that, so it's clear to me which one, and I'll respond there.
Sorry, I didn't get you.
Oh, sorry. As I said, if you could just add a new comment to the issue today, so it'll be obvious to me which one we're talking about. Just just kind
Okay.
of.
Yeah, I just added one. Like, I
Oh,
just
you got it.
filled
You just had it down. That's fine. Okay, I'll check that offline after the meeting then.
Sure. Okay.
Sounds
Yeah,
great.
feel free to ping me. We can discuss if there's anything. Otherwise, we can just.
Okay, sounds great. Okay. There's no other comments or discussion topics. We can end now. Thank you for joining. And we'll be back next week at the other time zone. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.